Hey there friends, it's Missy again. Thanks so much for stopping in today. I'm back with another layout for the Paige Evans design team, and I'm still using the Bungalow Lane collection. I decided to pull out some papers that had that dark blue color and some orange and maybe some of that faded red with some pink. I don't know, that color scheme just sort of jumped out at me and I decided to try to make it work. I've got some photos here that have mostly whites and skin tone, and then my daughter's shirt is navy blue, and so I thought it would be a good color scheme to highlight those. I've got one of Paige's cut files here. This is called Love Heart that I'm going to try to make work, and I also want to use some of Paige's stamps from Bungalow Lane. Now I went ahead and cut this cut file on a dark blue paper. I believe that's paper number 10. And for the background, I wanted to do lots of mixed media like I usually do, so I decided to go with some textured white cardstock instead of the smooth because I want to use some distress oxides on the background, and I love when you can see the texture of the cardstock through that color, and I think that just works really well with the distress oxide. So all I did there was I coated that with some clear gesso to prep it for all the stuff that I'm going to do. I'm letting that dry, and then I wanted to make some flowers with the stamps. So I pulled out another sheet that's kind of already been used for another project of white cardstock, and there's no gesso or anything on this. It's just plain cardstock, but it is textured. And I'm just going to start stamping some of these flowers from the stamp set and basically cut these out and make die cuts. And I'm just kind of playing around here. I wasn't sure what all colors I wanted to use yet and which style of flower, because there's several different flowers on the stamp set. I tried adding a little bit of water and stamping it, but I'm going to go with the dry stamps. There's like a whole bunch of different ways that you can stamp with distress oxides and create different effects, but I'm not trying to get too crazy with the stamping here. I'm using several colors of distress oxide. I'm using, let's see, Candied Apple, which is a red, and then Abandoned Coral, which is another shade of red. I'm going to wind up using that orange that's called Ripe Persimmon. This light pink color is called Kitsch Flamingo. And then later on, I'm going to add in some darker blue, which is going to be Chipped Sapphire. But yeah, you could do this with any type of ink. I love all these flowers. I love that they're different sizes. Yeah, so this is another way to extend your products. You know, if you run out of flowers and you want more flowers, stamps are a great way to do that. Actually, any shape, doesn't have to be just flowers, but just stamp as many as you want in whatever color you want and cut them out, and then you have as many die cuts as you want. So I'm gonna make those work at some point. I just wanted to go ahead and get those stamped out while my gesso was drying. So I want to do some color behind this, and I know I didn't even mention this yet, but I'm actually scrap lifting another layout that I made a couple years ago for Pink Fresh Studio. I just could not come up with an idea, and when I can't come up with an idea, I look at my layouts and try to make another one similar to one that jumps out at me. And so this is kind of a scrap lift on one of my own layouts. This is one of my favorite ways to use distress oxides. I lightly traced the heart so I knew exactly where it was going to go, and then I just take the actual ink pad and smudge it down right onto the paper. I'm kind of using the edge there, so it's not a big square, you know, the actual shape of the ink pad. And then just take some water to it and start to make the color activate, and it kind of just turns into watercolor. I love doing this with distress oxides. And I do want to preface this by saying that, you know, I did coat this paper with gesso. Gesso is what is going to allow this to basically turn into watercolor and run and blend and not just stay in that streaky look when you hit the ink pad onto the paper. If you want it to activate nicely like this with water, you want to use gesso first. I always find I get the best results with the gesso, and it allows me to move the color around, and then if you decide you don't like it, it's easy to dab it up, kind of like almost like you're erasing it. But it works really well. And so I'm just using those same pinks and oranges And I am going to pull in some of my shimmers. I love to mix and match products because you just get so many different new colors and so many effects. Let's see, I'm using, I believe that one is called Ruby, Spritz Ruby. It's kind of a pink with some reddish tones to it. And I just like to experiment, and I've used shimmers for so many years now. I kind of know what most of them are going to look like when I add them in. And like I said, since I'm using the gesso, I can always kind of dab it up and start over if I decide it's not the right color. So I'm just going to continue to play around here. This is called Caribbean Sunset, and it's kind of an orangey coral color. And then this one is called Peachy Keen, and it's more of an orange tone. So my original thought was I wanted to do lots of reddish, orange, pink colors behind this heart, since I cut the heart in that dark blue color. I wanted some contrast on the background. So this is where I start. And you know, I spend a lot of time on my backgrounds because I like to get them just so. Even though they look really random and messy, this one looks kind of weird because it's going to go behind this specified cut file. You know, I know exactly what I want it to look like, and I want it to kind of bleed color around the edges of this heart and the word that it's got cut into it. So that's why this looks kind of wonky. But when you put the cut file back on top of it, it looks like it makes sense. This is another favorite thing of mine that I love to do, and that's splatter white acrylic paint onto the background here, especially when the paint is wet, because when you splatter the white onto it, it kind of creates this fun marbly effect, and it's going to lighten things up a little bit, obviously because the paint is white, so it's going to lighten up any color and kind of dilute that bold color, and it just makes a fun spotty, marbly, cloudy look, you know. And it just depends on the look that you're going for, but I love to create layers of the mixed media, so that's why I spend so much time on the background. It's just something I like to play around with until I get it just so. And you get different effects, you know, if you let this sit and let it dry and then come back on top of it later with more, you get a different effect. So this is dry at this point, or mostly dry, and I love how that looks. I think it looks really watercolorish and really messy, and then it just totally changes when you put the love heart back on top of it. And I know that looks black because it's so dark, but it is blue. It's very dark blue. So I'm going to keep going. I'm not done yet. I wanted to add in some blue splatters since I've got some blue going on, but I wanted it to be subtle. So I pulled out shimmers. Oh, what's that color? Deep Blue Sea, I believe. I think I use Ahoy Matey and Deep Blue Sea, which are two dark blue colors. So I'm going to splatter. And then what I've learned in my splattering over the years is if you want it to look lighter, dab it up pretty quickly after you splatter it on. And if you want it to look, you know, that dark blue color like it is right there as it hits the paper, let it dry on its own. But if you want to soften it up, kind of roll the paper towels over it or use a napkin or whatever. And this is my little water brush here. I decided to kind of add some water to some of the blue splatters to add a little bit more of blue area in the background. And I hadn't really planned on doing that at first, but I'm glad I did because I think it makes it look a lot better once it's all said and done. You know, I feel that mixed media is just, it's different for every person. You know, every person likes certain things a certain way, and some people like a little bit of mixed media, some people like a lot. And I feel like for me, it just depends on the project. You know, sometimes I like a little, sometimes I like a lot. This one is a lot. Now I'm going to come back with the white gesso. I don't think I've used the white gesso yet. I used the clear. That's right. The white gesso, I love to do this kind of thing on dark paper. I like to take my finger and just smudge some onto the paper, or, you know, the cut file or whatever it is, to soften it up and kind of give it a weathered effect. It just kind of makes it look less crisp I guess you could say. I like for it to look a little faded or hazy, and the white gesso is great for that. I do want to pop the cut file up, so I'm going to cut some skinny strips of adhesive foam and basically stick it along the back of the entire cut file here. And I love to use this children's craft foam, I guess you would call it. It's easy to manipulate, easy to bend, and it sticks. And you can see I got the whole thing covered there. And now I got some dimension and depth going on. And here's where I decided that I wanted to add some more blue to the background. And I'm going to do it very, very small increments, just in like I think 3 spots. Very intentional. I'm using the nozzle just to dab a little bit of color, and then using my brush to further spread it around. I didn't want to go spraying it because, you know, when you spray it, it just goes wherever it's going to go, and then it's a big old mess a lot of times. So I like to make sure I know exactly where it's going and exactly what it's going to look like, even though it still looks random, if that makes any sense. Yeah, see there, I can dab that up if I want, if it's too much, and it's not going to muddy up the oranges and the pinks and the reds because I let it dry. And, you know, even though I use the gesso, when something is good and dry, it's not going to reactivate usually. If it does, it's not a whole bunch to, you know, create a muddy color. But I think that these little additions of these blue areas make such a big difference. You know, and that happens to me a lot, is where when I start out, I don't plan on doing something, and my idea changes as I go, and it winds up being better than I originally planned. See, I don't know. I just think the blue makes it. I love it. I decided to cut the photo strip up. I was going to just try to use it as one long photo strip, but I couldn't make it work the way I wanted to, so I cut them up. Oh, I'm not done with the background. Pfft, shocker. Coming back in with the white. Now, you can see the difference here. Now that the background is dry, the white splatters look like white splatters. They don't create that marbly effect because the background is not wet. So that's another technique, or not really technique, but just something to be aware of. You know, if your background is wet, it's going to blend in with the wet. But if it's dry, it's going to look like splatters. And I love to do just different techniques, especially with the white acrylic paint. It's the best way to get white splatters that look crisp and white if you want them to. All right, I'm going to work on layering some white tissue paper behind my small little photos there. And I'm just using plain old white tissue paper here. It's not fancy. It's not anything special. It's from a gift bag, I think, that I pulled out of the closet. Or maybe a box of shoes. I don't remember, but it's nothing crazy. I just like to do this to create some kind of a little bit of a subtle border behind the photos there. It's not something that stands out. It's just one of those small details that I feel like in a subtle way, it makes the photos stand out a little bit more on the background. And then I tried to go through some of my other papers that I had chosen in the beginning to layer behind the photos. I don't always layer paper behind the photos. Sometimes I do. Today I decided to do that. So I'm going to use another blue paper here. That's paper number 17. This particular sheet, though, I pulled out from the 12 by 12 paper pad from Bungalow Lane. I almost said Blue Lagoon. Where did that come from? It's not called Blue Lagoon. It's called Bungalow Lane. I think I have summer on my mind. I don't know. Cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs over here. So anyway, I'm just layering up these papers here. I'm going to use my little edge distresser there to ruffle up the edges because I love that texture. I'm also going to layer in this paper here, which is reddish and pink. And that is, let's see, paper number 6 or paper number 9? I can't remember. I've already used it on another layout previously, so it's one that I've cut into. And also this paper here that's on the red side with hearts, perfect for Valentine's Day. And I'm mainly just looking for a slight sliver of red around the edges. And I like that red because it's not a true red. It's kind of an orangey coral red, which I like. And I know I've said several times in the last couple of videos where I've used red, I keep saying I'm not a red person, and I don't feel like I am a red person, but here I am using it again. Who even am I? I don't even know. And I'm liking it. What is happening? All right, there's the background. It's all dry now. I think it's done. I could be lying, but for now it's done. And I love how that looks. I think it looks cool. And I made sure to leave some white space inside the heart. So I didn't cover up the entire thing. I feel like it's important to leave some negative, open, white space that's not going to crowd the photo or compete with the photo. And at the same time, it's going to allow your background to stand out. It's going to allow your photos to stand out. So I always like to leave some open, I guess you would call it negative space, just open white space. It just kind of gives your eyes a place to breathe. And I could just be spewing nonsense to you, but in my mind, that's how that works. I like to give the photos room. So there's just not all this stuff crowding around them. Because sometimes, you know, we get so carried away, we add so much stuff, so much pattern, so many colors, and so many things that it's hard to see the photo. You know, you look at the layout and it's like, gosh, there's so much stuff. Where's the picture? So I try to make sure that I give the photos some room to actually stand out. You know, and again, that is just me. It just depends on what you like. You know, there's no right or wrong thing here. This is just my thought process and how my brain works. I was bound and determined to use this big orange flower. I had that picked out from the beginning, so it is going on this layout. And then we're going to get busy cutting some flowers. Now, I don't record me cutting all of these flowers because it took a while. And, you know, fussy cutting is boring. I love doing it, but it's not fun to watch. So I went ahead and fussy cut out a lot of the flowers, and we're going to scatter them around the layout like so. And I did stamp some more off camera with that little teeny tiny solid flower. I did more reds, oranges, pinks, and blues. And I love how they look. They are so cute. I like that they look kind of imperfect and faded because I stamped them on textured cardstock. I went through all the stickers and the die cuts and all that stuff and tried to pick out things that were either pink, reddish, orange, or blue, and tried to work them in. I'm going to use that little chipboard piece that says Give Love because it's white and orange and it's the perfect spot for it. And then we're going to glue all these flowers down. Some of the flowers are on top of the cut file. Some of them are flat. Then we're going to glue the pictures down. I don't wind up using the orange butterfly for whatever reason. I put it there just to see if it would grow on me, but I wind up not using it. I don't think I used it. But we're going to glue things down. And I was trying to figure out if I wanted to add something as part of the title. Because I know I'm going to use that big love on the left as the main word in the title. Because it's there. You know, it's a built-in title. You might as well go with it. And there's really not a lot of other space. But this is what I got so far. I love flowers because you can bend up the petals and just, it's so easy to make dimension and depth because it just jumps off the page, you know? I love how this is looking. And I really like this color scheme. I love it. I love it. I'm going to add in some thread. And now I know I've glued things down, so we're going to have to kind of get creative here about wedging the thread in. But I'm only going to use the dark blue color. And we're going to tuck it in a couple spots just to add some texture, add a little more interest, some pops of that blue color. Because we do got a lot. What? Grammar. We do have a lot. We have a lot of pink and orange going on. And red. So I wanted to make sure that I had equal amounts of blue, even if it was just subtle. So the thread is good for doing that. And plus, I love the texture, and I love the whole messy effect of the thread. So we're going to tuck that in 3 spots. And keep playing with it until I get it just so. Are you guys perfectionists as much as I am? I spend so much time working on things that, you know, in the end, it doesn't matter. But it matters to me. So I spend way too much time getting thread just perfect. All right, so yeah, I pulled out some thickers to make the word you in orange, red, and that pink color, and kind of stuck them over here underneath the you. No, underneath the love. So that's going to be our title. How many times have I used love you as a title? Probably way more than I can count, but you know what? It's okay. It's okay if you have the same title on multiple layouts. In the end, it doesn't matter. More splatters here. We're coming back in with the blue. Covering up my photos because there's a 99.9% chance that I will splatter blue right on someone's face. So, yeah. I've learned that the hard way several times, many times over the years. But yeah, I want these to be nice and soft, so I splatter and then I roll over it. So it's kind of a nice soft splatter. And here's what we got. Last thing I'm going to do is add my journaling. My camera messed up and didn't record me writing the journaling, but it's pretty obvious. I just drew some lines and then added it down there at the bottom. And that is it. That's the final layout. I love how this turned out. This was really fun to make. And yeah, I love that the cut file just sort of designed the page for me, you know. That's one of my favorite things about cut files, is they can basically create a layout for you. I love all these stamped flowers. I think it's so cute. You can see the texture there on the background. See, that's why I like to use textured cardstock whenever I use the Distress Oxide technique, because you can see the lines of the cardstock and it just adds to the interest. See it there? I love that. I love the imperfect stamped flowers because they look kind of messy and wonky. But anyway, I hope this, excuse me, I'm losing my voice. I hope this inspires you in some way, or gives you some ideas to try. I'll link this collection below, and thank you guys so much for watching. I will see you in my next video, and I hope you have a great week.